Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Packs to Cube series here on the Collected Conjuring channel. My name is John Cos and I will be your host. We will be joined later in the episode by Dom the Bearded Guy after we've opened our packs and we get into building our decks. So today's set is going to be Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths. Before we start talking about Ikoria, do a quick review of where we are at. Last week we did Theros Beyond Death, and it actually came out perfect where we used all 5 colors exactly once. So green didn't get a chance to make up any ground, but it didn't lose any more ground either because we did have a green deck. Looking at what we have for our fixing so far, I remember we had 5 temples that we opened in M20, 6 or 2 more in Theros Beyond Death, so most likely we will end up with all 10 temples, or I'll just spend the 50 cents and buy the 9th and 10th ones or whatever if we don't open all of them. So that'll give us one complete cycle of dual lands that we can use for the fixing once we get into putting everything together and into the cube. So today's set, Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths. Ikoria is a new plane that they just created for this set. The big big deal of this set is that you're going to have giant creatures. That you'll have creatures with the ability called Mutate, which allows you to basically merge multiple creatures into one, and then usually each one of the Mutate cards has a when you mutate this card, do this sort of benefit to them. So there's upside in merging the creatures together using the mutate ability, because you'll get to trigger those benefits more often. The downside is it only takes one removal spell to kill the creature, or to bounce the creatures. So that's kind of the balance in this set. The other thing that they brought back in this set is cycling. Cycling is, when a card has cycling, it'll have a mana cost, and you can pay that mana cost and discard it to draw a card. So you can filter through your deck when you're playing cycling more quickly than you normally would. So it's kind of interesting. The link to this MTG wiki page will be in the description of the video as usual if you want to go into any more detail before we open the packs, and if not, come back in a couple seconds and you can see us opening some cards. Hello and welcome back to the Ikoria Lair of Behemoths episodes of Packs to Cube. Let's start ripping some packs. Whirlwind of Thought, definitely a card that I would like to play, but I'll probably get shut down by Dom the Bearded Guy. Blitz of the Thunder Raptor is a good removal spell if you're in some sort of spells deck. Zagoth Triome, Sultai colors, so blue, green, and black. Taps for mana of all 3 of those for any of those 3 colors, and also cycles for 3 mana. So all the Triomes are really good mana fixers, and will definitely make it in the cube at some point. Passivism goes in any white limited deck ever, so if we end up playing a white deck, I'm sure that makes it in. Death's Oasis, apparently we have 7 of them, so that's something that'll have to get fixed later. Trumpeting Gnar is one of the better of the Mutate cards. Mythos of Nethroi, that's a very good removal spell. 3 mana for removing a creature, and if you are in Abzan colors, so black, white, and green, and you pay 1 mana of each of those colors to cast it, it gets to remove a non-land permanent instead of just a creature. Ozolith, that would end up going in the cube if we end up building some sort of counter theme. Song of Creation, another card that I'm going to try and play and probably get shut down. Zenith Flare is the big cycling payoff card. I'd love to see another 1 or 2 of those if we end up in some sort of cycling deck. Even if we don't have more than one, I'll probably consider it anyway. Ruinous Ultimatum, so the ultimatums are big, splashy, 7 mana cards, but they cost very specific mana to cast them. So we'll see if we end up playing that one, or if we end up getting any more, if we end up playing the other one as well. The Draenith Stinger, exactly what you want in a cycling deck. Can be a 2 mana body, it's a cycling payoff, and also is a 1 mana cycler itself. There's our second ultimatum. I believe that one is the better of the two. Deals 5 damage to something, you gain 5 life and draw 5 cards. Anything that draws 5 cards, kind of want to play if you can. Flourishing Fox, same as the Draenith Stinger. It's a body, but this one's only 1 mana. A cycling payoff, it gets a +1/+1 counter each time you cycle, and it cycles for 1 mana itself. Fancy version of the Jeskai Triumph, blue, red, white. Flame Spill is interesting. It's a spell that deals damage to a creature and essentially has trample, meaning the excess damage is done to the creature's controller. Ooh, Riel is a total me card. I'm going to try and force Riel plus the 2 Cathartic Reunions, and we'll see whether I get shut down on that or not. And here we're coming up to the last few cards of pack opening, and we will return here as soon as this is done in a few seconds with Dom the Bearded Guy for deck building. Hello and welcome to the deck building portion on episode 8 of the Packs to Cube series here on the Collected Conjuring channel. I'm your host Kaz, and as always we have Dom the Bearded Guy here to help us out with deck building.
First point of help, this is episode 7.
Is it?
Yeah.
Whoops. Welcome to episode 7. We are doing Ikoria, Lair, Behemoths today, and the last 2 videos that we did, we built 0 blue decks, and we're going to make up for that by building 2 blue decks, it looks like. The cycling deck and the mutate deck are the 2 best decks in the limited format probably for this set, and I think that's just what we're going to do. So I'll start with the cycling deck. Riel, the Everwise, is definitely a card that was made specifically for me, not anybody else. Does everything I want to do. With the cycling deck, whenever you discard 1 or more cards, you're technically cycling or discarding when you're cycling, so you can discard a card to cycle it and then draw a card with a Riel, and then she also gets +1/+0 for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. Yeah, this card is mine. The other thing we have is we do have the payoff Zenith Flare. Zenith Flare deals X damage to any target, and you gain X life, where X is the number of cycling cards in your graveyard. And then we're just going to start pounding in the 1 mana cyclers. Flourishing Fox is another payoff for cycling. Whenever you cycle a card, Flourishing Fox gets a +1/+1 counter, and it cycles itself for only 1 mana. If we're planning on getting a bunch of instants and sorceries in the graveyard that make Blitz of the Thunder Raptor a premium removal spell for either a creature or a planeswalker. It's also exile removal if that matters. And then Footfall Crater, garbage card but cycles for 1, so we play it. I think that's all the 1 mana ones out of the uncommons. Let's go down to the commons. We have the Drannith Healer, which gains a life if you cycle, or also cycles itself.
Are you not intending to play white mana in this deck?
I would definitely need to play all 3 colors, because we'll need Riel and the Zenith Flare.
Well, then you want the pacifism, right?
Yeah, I'll put the pacifism in too, for sure.
And then the Snare Tactician is really good in the deck you're building.
Yep. I accidentally skipped over it because I'm way more familiar with the constructed version of the cycling deck, which is just like 4 copies of a bunch of different 1 mana cyclers and 4 Zenith Flares. So some of the other cycling payoffs that are played only in limited, I'll miss a little bit. Would we play Cathartic Reunion in this? Probably.
No, it doesn't cycle. You would rather play Shredded Sails.
Okay.
Go for blood for sure.
Yeah, go for blood for sure. Fight card also cycles for 1.
Prickly Marmoset.
Prickly Marmoset is a cycling payoff. Get +2/+0 whenever you cycle, and it has First Strike.
Yeah, Fire Prophecy is premium removal. Raking Claws is a 1 mana cycler, if I recall correctly. Oh, 2 mana. Well, you'll play it anyway.
Yeah.
You don't have enough.
Any of these 1 mana cyclers? I don't think so. I don't think green had any. So in the blue, Startling Development is a 1 mana cycler. Also can turn a creature into a 4/4 until end of turn. Frostveil Ambush, tap 2 creatures and they don't untap for 5. So it's good to punch something through in the late game. Also cycles for 1. in the early game. I don't think we have any more of the 1 mana cyclers there. Memory Leak cycles for 1. We'll never actually cast that spell. It's just here because it says cycling and only costs 1. I don't remember if there's any other 1 mana black cycling cards. Alright, so we're at 19 cards already with just 1 mana cyclers and payoffs.
So then, the way that you're building this deck, do you have enough targets to have the Lord Rakkus be in that deck? Because it's going to be able to pull back an instant that you cycled or an early Zenith Flare. You need to have non-humans to mutate onto it. And, I mean, you have...
The Fox, I think, is the... Fox and the...
Fox, Marmoset. Yeah, I guess you really can't.
No. Would I try Jam Inspired Ultimatum in this deck?
I mean, I thought you were just building a red-white cycling deck or a red-blue cycling deck, so if you're going to play all 3 colors anyway, I would definitely put the ultimate.
Okay.
It says draw 5 cards on it. It's a cards game, right?
Yeah, it is. And you'll notice that during the pack opening, I opened the fancy version of the Rogrin Triome that may or may not have made it into my collection and replaced by the regular version. They're my cards. But as usual, the fixing gets added later, so this will just go into... the Triomes will end up in the maybe pile, which actually is the probably pile for whenever we add fixing to the decks. So I'm going to grab those really quick. Ozolith will be another one that gets into that category while I'm thinking about it. So we only need 3 more cards for this deck. This is probably a 16 land deck though, right? If I have this many 1 mana cyclers.
At most. And only because you're playing the Ultimatum. Like when I was drafting the cycling deck, I would regularly play like 14 or 13 lands.
Okay.
So you might even play 15.
Oh, Flame Spill we'd probably want, right?
Yeah, it's just premium removal. So the crystals do cycle, but they cycle for 3, so they're not great. But if you had one that was exactly your colors, or they cycle for 2, but I don't think you do.
No, it looks like all we have is the Sultai one.
Oh, there's more than that.
Oh, yeah, we have... Okay, so we have the Marty one, and I think this is Abzan. Yeah. This is close to our colors. Can play it in and pretend like we're going to cast the Memory Leak.
Just jam the Shredded Sails in. I mean, more cycling is good.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that.
You also, Blade Banish, is that the 4 mana kill a creature? Yeah, you want that.
Okay.
And Divine Arrow you probably want too?
I don't typically play the exiled creature power 4 or greater, but it's uniquely good in this format with all the mutate running around. So I'm definitely more likely to play this card in Ikoria than I would be in a regular draft environment or a different draft environment.
Oh, mutate in just huge things too. Like it's better here than it would be otherwise.
So if you're saying you're going all the way down to 13 lands, I'd say I'm comfortable with 15 and saying that we're good on this deck.
Sure. I mean, it's fine with me. It's probably still going to flood a little bit. You're going to spend a lot of turns cycling multiple cards. And if you ever land Riel, you're going to draw even more. So, makes sense.
Right.
I like that you don't really need blue in this deck except to cast Riel.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose an Inspired Mold, but
Ultimatum.
that's not getting cut. All right, so it's time for some mutation then, right?
Yep, let's mutate.
So this is traditionally base green-blue. Mutate mechanic, you need to have non-human creatures to mutate onto. And because of the way that the mutate costs work, they're usually one cheaper than the creature. So the critical point for the bases of the mutate, the just non-human creatures, is a 2-drop. And we have several copies of some of the best. So Polywog Symbiote, there in the blue at the top, is one of the best starter creatures. It actually makes things cheaper to mutate and lets you loot when you mutate. So it's just like turn 2 that, turn 3 you can mutate something that costs 4. Very good. And then on the green side, if you scroll down in the commons, we have a pair of the premium 2-drop, which is Essence Symbiote. When you mutate onto a creature, you get an extra counter and some life, and it's also a non-human 2-drop. So these are the creatures that we're really going to try and hit. In addition to those, we have the other one that you can use in blue, which is Glimmerbell, the jellyfish that is a 2-drop non-human creature, perfect for jamming your subsequent mutates onto. Now, there are others that we might play in the mutate deck. Specifically, the 3-drop Thieving Otter is very good in mutate, where you can play it on 3, then make it huge on 4 and attack, and then they either have to block, which is not usually good for them, or give you a card, which is also not good for them. So now we want to grab all of our great mutates, and we're going to start at the very top of the screen. We have Auspicious Starix. Or it's at the top of my screen. It's not at the top of yours. It's a green 7-drop, uncommon, or 5-drop, 6 to mutate. So when you mutate this, you basically get to reveal cards from the top of your deck for the number of times that the creature has mutated and put permanents into play. So sometimes you'll hit lands, but then you're not drawing them, and sometimes you'll hit creatures and they'll just flop onto the board. It's great. So generally you just go very vertical with one creature and get the Starix on it. So in addition to that, we have Parcel Beast, which is a gold uncommon, another premium mutate creature. It only costs 2 mana to mutate, and it lets you put land straight into play or otherwise draw it from your deck if it's not land. So generates a lot of advantage cheaply. We have Trumpeting Gnar, which is also a blue-green gold card. This one costs a little more to mutate, but it actually comes with multiple creatures, so it's totally worth the investment. And then if we jump back over to the common side in green, we have the creature that fetches out lands when you mutate with it, Migratory Greathorn. This is another key piece of the mutate deck. And then we'll probably play the Almighty Brushwag, the 1-drop, because you can mutate onto it, and then when you have mana open, they just can never block it. So I believe we've hit all the green and blue mutate cards and enablers, but let's just take one more check. We definitely don't have any more green. If we look over at blue, Dreamtail Heron, that's another key one. So that's another great common mutate card, draws, makes something evasive. So normally I'm always going to play looters in my deck, but in this case specifically, I don't really want my 2-drops to be things I can't mutate onto. That's just really a non-bow. So I probably wouldn't play the Facet Reader. So now, if we look, we have 13 cards that are just enablers and mutates. We still haven't put any sort of spells or removal, and you usually splash at least one color in this deck. So we have a very good start here. IVL Elemental is actually way better in the mutate deck than it is in any other iteration it's ever been made because of the way that the rules work. The +1/+1 counters get added on last. So the IVL Elemental is on the bottom. You mutate over it, you get the new base stats, and then you add the counters over it. So it just winds up contributing to the mutate pile more than it otherwise would. In the same token, Fertilid, which we have in the green commons, works the same way. It also helps us fix our mana. So now with the 2 Fertilids, plus we have an Evolving Wilds in this pool, we're going to easily be able to play some mutates in other colors. In this case, I've looked ahead, and I think that black is the one that we want to use. We have Chittering Harvester in the uncommons, which is big, and when you mutate with it, your opponents get a Diabolic Edict effect. So you can stack that up and really chew through their creatures. Repeatable edicts are much better than singular edicts. In addition to that, we have Cavern Whisperer, which is not a must play. It's a common. It's not a must play, but if we have room for it, it's a juicy mutate that triggers all of our mutate stuff. So now, right now, we can't remove anything, but we do have a great blue tempo play in Pouncing Shore Shark. Yet again, with the mutate keyword, this one does a Mana War effect. Every time you mutate it, it bounces, and it has flash. So you can actually mutate it at instant speed, change the power and toughness of your creature, and bounce one of theirs. Very effective. This deck is going to almost certainly play Capture Sphere out of the common slot to give it some extra removal. And then, in addition, in the uncommon slot, it has the sneaky good Mystic Subdual. Mystic Subdual, when a lot of people read it first, didn't realize how much it does. It's like the only thing that messes with a mutate going on. So if your opponent's mutating and they go to put the mutate creature on top of the other one, you can put the Mystic Subdual on it and none of the triggers happen. And it still sits there and shrinks the creature. It's extremely powerful. So now we're at 22 cards and we really haven't even tried. We probably want to play this Primal Empathy because we have a lot of large creatures and things that grow, and it's going to generate repeatable card advantage. If you have the biggest creature, you draw a card, and if you don't, you make one of your creatures bigger. It's just solid for what we're doing. Now we're at 23 cards, and we've basically just put in enablers and mutators. That's the way this deck always works. I'm pretty happy with it. There's other cards that we haven't played. If we were heavier bet black, Boot Nipper is like one of the key mutate setups because the ability counter carries over to whatever you mutate onto it, and it can also just trade off for things. But I'm pretty happy with this.
Yeah, let's change our sort. Mana cost. Looks like we're pretty well spread out.
And what you have to remember is almost all of those cards cost less than they say.
Yep.
Right? Parcel Beast mutates for 2. The Cavern Whisperers mutate for 4. So do the Herons. So does the Shore Shark. And plus, we have a couple ways to make that even cheaper. So this deck is going to go pretty quick, and it's going to build up pretty fast.
Nice.
I would probably also put the Void Beckoner into one of the decks if it had more black. Those huge uncommon cyclers that give an ability are really handy, and then they're a nice way to include a big finisher. But in this deck, we don't need it. If our mana is excellent and I haven't looked at it that closely, I would include the Porcuparrot as well, because that's a pinger that pings for the number of times you mutated, so it can get really out of hand. But it's not worth it, I don't think, in this deck unless the mana is just perfect.
All right. Well, that went pretty quickly.
As Ikoria. Also, side note, we didn't have a single companion in this whole pool, so we kind of lost out.
Yep.
We can be playing the green Mythos in the Mutate deck, though, and probably should.
Okay. So yeah, I'm going to move this over to the maybe board, because that's something that could get played at some point.
Oh, and there's a dead weight, too. That probably should get played.
Okay. Okay, so that wasn't as easy. Now we got cuts.
Well, I mean, we don't have to. We can take those cards out, but the Mythos should definitely be.
Okay.
And take out one of the, one of that. And then I guess you could just cut the dead weight, because black is a splash in this deck, so it's going to be very late and not do as much.
Makes sense.
All right. Pretty slick.
Yeah, well, there you have it. Couple efficient deck builds that pretty much just built themselves. We just moved the cards around. All right, so that'll wrap up episode 7. Not 8. I was wrong the first time. And corrected by Dom the Bearded Guy, because that's his job. So, with that, we will say goodbye and catch you next episode.
Take care. Well, that was on rails.
Yeah, I'm doing the thing where I can't get to where I thought I was on the OBS, but